The economic impact of COVID-19 will push as many as 88 million to 115 million people further into global poverty. And I want to see these stats, plus a tidbit about 40% of America's wealth being owned by the top 1%, against a backdrop of the plethora of wealth porn that dominates the Instagram Explore page. We see aspirations and declarations of wealth everywhere, most notably in what people deem flex culture. On YouTube, a popular genre of videos that isn't aesthetic-driven music videos and insane stunts are repetitive luxury unboxing and hauls and tours of bulging closets and packed garages. When you scroll Instagram, the most popular posts involve flexing never-before-seen outfits, rare and fancy cars, and luxury vacations. On gossip pages, flashy real estate purchases, which can trample over a celebrity's privacy, are somehow publicized to the media, along with their other purchases and income being frequently discussed and announced. Many of the nation's favorite guilty pleasure shows and movies involve lavish displays of wealth in the form of exotic real estate, designer clothing, and unnecessary beauty treatments. That last one is especially big, with studies and surveys saying high-intensity watchers of reality TV are more likely to obtain plastic surgery. While that speaks to our perceptions of beauty, America's wealth porn media is a reflection of what we value most, even if it exploits or endangers human beings. For example, back in January, I saw a few op-eds and tweets from people obsessed with Anna Shea from Netflix's then recent hit show, Bling Empire. The show is like Real Housewives meets Crazy Rich Asians and Selling Sunset. Despite the fact that the woman's obscene wealth was built from the sale of arms, yay terrorism, yay war, yay genocide, she's like so entertaining and relatable. This isn't new. From future presidents on lifestyles of the rich and the famous, to My Super Sweet 16, Cribs, Keeping Up with the Klan, Real House Racists of Dallas, etc. To uncancelable racists blowing big bags like Jeffree Star and Trisha Paytas, to respectable and less problematic beauty gurus and lifestyle influencers. These are the kinds of spectacles that many Americans watch, whether we're hate watching in disbelief or because the luxury on screen functions as inspirational wealth porn. But what is the cost of consuming so much wealth porn? And worse, what is the cost of consuming it uncritically?
That'll show those poor.
Why are you cheering, Fry? You're not rich.
True, but someday I might be rich, and then people like me better watch their step.
Before you go thinking wealth porn, greed, and the desire to emulate the upper class is strictly an American issue, luxury spending and wealth inequality are both up across the globe. Dubai, Abu Dhabi, and other locations in the UAE are known for their incredible infrastructure, wealth, and luxury, and the tourism industry has been showcased in social media and the other kind of media.
Okay, no. Come hold them.
The place relies on abused migrant workers from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and other South Asian countries. In Nigeria, a global superpower with a luxury industry on the rise and soon to be one of the top 5 most populous countries in the world, they have a poverty rate of 40%. Singapore, beautifully depicted in smash hit Crazy Rich Asians, is the 4th wealthiest country in the world, and they have foreign workers in 1 out of every 5 households. They are often exploited and abused, with their pay not keeping up with Singapore's high cost of living. In China, where there were no billionaires as recently as 1999, over 257 billionaires have been added to its previous 621 since the beginning of the pandemic. More than 2 million Chinese people live on less than $2 a day, and many others work in factories that produce goods that we Westerners can buy cheaply. Last year, a government official mentioned that 40% of the population scrape by on less than around $155 a month. Meanwhile, 70% of luxury consumers in China, Russia, and the UAE has increased luxury spending since 2013. Russia has seen steady rising wealth inequality in the past decade. During that same period, America, which has over 600 billionaires, increased its luxury spending by 53%. As new information about the last 3 years comes to include COVID-19 analysis, we can expect poverty to worsen, while a concentrated few gets richer globally. We'll also see this wealth gap misrepresented or even lied about. U.S. Census report, for example, reported that before this pandemic, the poverty rate was going down, with only 34 million people in poverty in 2019, down from only 38.2 million in 2018. But then, when you look closer at what the U.S. Census report considers poverty, $12,760 a year for a single-person household, or $26,200 for a four-person household, you'll see that above poverty is still soul-crushing exploitation with a lack of health care, housing, and other hallmarks of quality living. For example, the federal government advises that nobody should spend more than 30% of their income on housing. Okay, cool. In my home state of North Carolina, a person needs to make at least $16.35 an hour or $34,000 a year to afford a 2-bedroom rental. The minimum wage in North Carolina has been $7.25 since 2008. So, most average Americans don't keep up with billionaires, or are even able to point out billionaires who aren't especially eccentric, social, and/or listed on Forbes. Instead, our tolerance of the filthy rich is built and continually tested via celebrity and Hollywood. From athletes to singers to actors to the things we watch in movies, many of us are able to identify with, relate to, or love them, and often aspire to their level of wealth, even if we're uncomfortable with the fact that they earn more money than the people who handle our children and food. But not uncomfortable enough. Many Americans are actually perfectly content to accept U.S. wealth inequality, driven by a few factors as is. And what are these factors that many people love to ignore? Many of the country's wealthiest and the country's most stable middle class are eating off of wealth made on the backs of enslaved people, indentured servants, sharecroppers, and other forms of exploitation. With this blood money, their ancestors bought land and homes, created businesses, and financed legislation to benefit them and their progeny. Racism meant that this same kind of intergenerational wealth and power was denied to Black Americans and other minorities in the form of unpaid and underpaid labor, home ownership loan denials, unfair tax codes, redlining, and untrustworthy lending practices. In addition to these larger systemic issues that you can read about literally anywhere, my God, don't be asking for sources in these comments acting like you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. There were untold numbers of Black people who had property destroyed or stolen by racists with no justice paid. So it's no surprise that Black Americans are 2 times more likely than their white peers to live in poverty, with the poverty rate around 20.8%. And poverty is an even larger problem among Native people, with the poverty rate sitting at 25%. In addition to genocide, they've had to deal with stolen land, the kidnapping of their children, and plenty of lies and corruption from the government. Meanwhile, Americans of all races must grapple with stagnant wages and exploitative gig jobs. CEO super salaries, coupled with rising cost of living, has only added to the inequality among all races. Since 1978, the typical worker's compensation has risen only 12%, while the average CEO compensation has grown by 940%. I say all this to say, America is fundamentally exploitative and always has been. Even still, people will tell you that America's poverty problem is because of the poor's alleged laziness and lack of ingenuity. I bet you they're in the comments right now. If they're of a certain religious stock, they'll pull out the prosperity gospel and point to God as the source for their infinite blessings, even if it is really just a mix of hard work, luck, and privilege. Sure, God doesn't care about the kids of Flint, Michigan, the victims of police brutality, or the hundreds of thousands of homeless Americans, but he was looking out for Tiffany from Houston's promotion. If they're not religious, they'll pull out the bootstrap narrative and then point to hard work as the source for their success, even if, again, it's a mix of hard work, luck, and privilege. And then some of them will brag about having multiple cars, homes, Birkins, Audemars Piguets, Christmas trees, and if they're a special kind of asshole, they'll judge those looking for a stimulus check, adequate wages, or mutual aid.
I'm tired of people lying to me. Money does grow on trees.
So why do so many of the American middle class and newly wealthy prioritize materialism while while ignoring or even outright denying the worsening poverty? And why do so many poor people, the wannabe millionaires, judge other poor people? It may have something to do with their media diet. Previous generations weren't granted full access passes to the lives and pockets of celebrities through social media, the internet, and TV. But for the Americans who grew up from the 80s onward, the spending habits of the wealthy and famous have been shoved in our faces. And along the way, plenty of people have gotten material items and income confused for self-worth.
I am rich.
Psychologist and writer Tim Kasser detailed in The High Price of Materialism how the focus on materialist values like wealth, possessions, status, and image became common among average Americans in the 1950s post-World War II prosperity era, but really bloomed in the 80s. The 1980s personified greed and wealth in a way that hadn't been seen since the Roaring 20s, and this is something I will explore in depth in my upcoming series, Lexual Does the 80s. Both eras were rife with consumerism being encouraged through new forms of media, swindlers, fictitious sales, and outright scams. In the decade of shoulder pads and MTV, Wall Street brokers gutted companies, social programs were abandoned and defunded under Ronald Reagan, televangelists fattened their wallets more than ever before, and yuppies, or young professionals in urban areas, could get their luxury cues from TV shows like Dynasty. Dallas, and more to the point of this video, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. The show, hosted by Robin Leach, ran from 1984 to 1995 and was emblematic of the wealth and greed that defined the 1980s. Guests had to have a net worth of at least $50 million to appear.
How often have you fantasized about being rich and famous? It's certainly a lifestyle that few really get to enjoy. Even though we all can live it, we can now all get a close-up look at just how the rich and famous really live, thanks to Robin Leach and his television crews and the production of the weekly series, Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous, which are seen on 170 stations, many of these independent stations that are on the line today. Robin, it's good to see you.
Yeah, I find that although money doesn't buy happiness, it sure does help. I've yet to meet an unhappy millionaire.
And this genre of show would only become more popular with the boom in reality TV programming in the 2000s, because Americans haven't stopped gorging themselves on celebrity culture and wealth porn. It's not hard to get nostalgic about the 2000s. I mean, I was a kid with no bills or the knowledge of how this world is fundamentally screwed, but my media diet was garbage. As an adult, I can suss out what is fake, what is morally questionable, and what is downright problematic. But as a poor, doe-eyed preteen in North Carolina, I was bowled over and inspired by the wealth porn proliferating my screens. There were the ghastly and spoiled rich brats on My Super Sweet 16 giving out MP3 player invitations and getting fancy cars. My 17, J14, Cosmo Girl, and Teen Vogue magazines were always filling me in on which celebrities were wearing which designer clothes and how and why I needed to find dupes if I couldn't afford the originals. There were the luxury-filled hip-hop videos with million-dollar budgets on 106 in Park, where rappers tossed diamond chains over their shoulders and partied in exotic mansions. Speaking of mansions, there were outlandish episodes of Cribs to watch in between episodes of The Fabulous Life of...
Prepare yourself for the world of P. Diddy. A place where no item is too expensive.
He went into Versace in Paris and dropped $51,000 in 28 minutes.
Which kept up with everybody from Brad and Angelina to billion-dollar Wall Street brokers. Cribs aired for 9 years from 2000, and The Fabulous Life of aired from 2003 for approximately 10 years. Cribs was later revived, though. Meanwhile, Entertainment Tonight, E! News, and Inside Edition always provided glimpses into the glamorous lives of socialites and famous for being rich and famous types, like the racist Paris Hilton, and book series like The Clique and Gossip Girl were filled with designer references I had never heard of. There were also tons of talent shows and game shows promising instant fame and money. My preteen and teen celebrity media diet was predated by early lessons in elementary school. In 3rd grade, there was the Junior Achievement Program, where we learned about the economy, entered a lottery for fake jobs that paid fake money, and were then encouraged to use the fake money on goods and services when we went out on lunch break. Woo, shopping! I'm an American. But there was a 4th grade class exercise I'll never forget. My teacher instructed the class to spend $1 million. We were given access to the computer and encouraged to shop for $1 million worth of items, accounting for everything and adding up the total. You could only buy one of each item. As I looked up things and added things up, I learned that there are a lot of things that I wanted to buy one day and that I could only buy those things if I was really, really rich, and I needed to learn how to be really, really rich. And by the way, I couldn't spend all of that $1 million as an 11-year-old. I tried. It's no surprise that pre-college me thought she was going to be a millionaire by 21, and that she also thought being poor was a reason to feel less than other people. This brings me to the material value scale. Materialism was defined in 1992 by 2 sociologists as the importance that persons attach to their material possessions and the acquisition thereof. To determine a person's level of materialism, they are judged on a scale of 3. The bottom rung is centrality, meaning acquiring possessions is a central part of a person's life. The second is pursuit of happiness, meaning that acquiring possessions is a vital part of keeping a person happy. And the third is possession-defined success, meaning materialists judge the success of themselves and others by the quantity and quality of their possessions. So let's say that there are 3 people: centrality Carmen, pursuit Philip, and success Serena. Carmen loves keeping up with the latest trends in luxury and tech, only buys things that she can afford, and doesn't derive much pleasure from showing them off excessively, or comparing what she owns to others. She would never go into debt over possessions or cross certain boundaries. Philip, meanwhile, also loves buying these same things, but he gets happy from showing them off, or knowing he has something exclusive. He feels happy from his purchases because ownership is central to his happiness. He might go into debt or cross certain boundaries. Serena, on the other hand, keeps up with all the latest trends and buys things to excess, even if it means debt, committing crimes, or hoarding. She also feels empowered and happy from showing these things off and comparing how much she has to other people. She judges other people for having less than her, even if they don't want more, and she gains something resembling self-esteem from having things that other people don't. She also believes that people's lack of material goods is a reflection of their worthiness, so don't be surprised when she only befriends other sedity Serenas. But those relationships are probably very fickle, if not downright fake, as materialism is strongly correlated with envy. One 2013 study found that millennials rank higher on the material value scale than other groups, and that having a big celebrity media diet, the kind that many members of my generation were exposed to in the 2000s, is significantly correlated with materialism. Teens and young adults today may not have the same reality TV shows of the early 2000s, but they have the shiny influencers of YouTube and TikTok. The addition of luxury and aesthetic central apps like Instagram, whose main business model of late is to get you to buy, has not helped matters. People who rank high on the material value scale are more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, personal insecurities, impulsive buying, and low levels of life satisfaction. Because you can never have enough stuff, material goods are being dumped down an endless hole. And this has a ton of negative effects on the environment, and that's a whole nother can of worms. But what happens when you're materialistic, obsessed with keeping up with celebrity lifestyles, and dead broke? Some people try to get as physically close to wealth as possible, even if they can't personally possess it. When reminiscing on MTV Cribs for the New York Times, writer Talman Joseph Smith said, quote, "Even once I entered adulthood and had to get a normal job, having failed at becoming a pro athlete, the show's lavishness still probably inflected my decision making. Like when at 22, I rejected more stable employment in order to work at a glossy magazine, making little money but rubbing up against fame, wealth, art, excess, and open bars as a matter of course. So if you can't join the rich, work for them, I guess." Then there are others who take on the wealthy persona for themselves. Think Anna Anna Delvey, the fake heiress from that really long story that I'm not even gonna put in here. Remember how I said one day soon I'd love to see current wealth disparity stats up against my Instagram Explore page? I'm interested in knowing how much of the luxury cars, homes, clothing, jewels, etc. is real. I want to know how much of it is sustainable, and I want to know how much of it is being parlayed into actual stability. We've all seen the recent stories about people being arrested in the past few months for taking out fraudulent PPP loans. One Houston woman received approximately $3.6 million from the CARES Act, which she allegedly used on 2 homes, multiple cars, and luxury goods. Nearly 500 other people have been charged with fraud because of $569 million in total stolen funds. This is just one of the many flavors of scamming culture. While there are scam artists committing crimes for health issues or to survive, and there are plenty of companies doing unscrupulous shit every day, many scammers are chasing a lifestyle, and it's easy to write off luxury theft or fraud as payback and class warfare, but is it that simple? Is it really payback or class warfare when the victims are fellow poor people?
That's some bitch ass nigga shit.
Or when ultimately the scam just feeds the beast? People fake a lot of stuff on the internet, including their wealth, and this isn't new. Because our society is so materialistic and attaches ownership and wealth to a person's values and capabilities, pretending to be wealthier than you appear can be a strategic move, albeit deceitful. Recall how I brought up cribs. Untold numbers of celebrities rented mansions and cars or showed off property that would eventually be owned by a bank because they were knee-deep in debt behind the scenes. And they did it all for clout. Ja Rule, who was at one point one of the biggest rap acts of the early 2000s, rented a mansion that forbade filming and was later sued by the homeowner. 50 Cent, Birdman, and Bow Wow all rented cars for their appearance on cribs. It's not unusual to see some of today's celebrities and internet stars pretending to own Airbnb rentals and rented cars.
But you know what I like a lot more than materialistic things? Knowledge.
They can even rent luxury clothing or pay a reported $64 an hour to snap pics in a parked private jet. For the poor and middle class who seek to project an image of wealth for an explosion of new followers, they can turn to internet forums that give them golden advice like visit open houses and take pictures like you live there, or post Yelp reviews for restaurants you've never been to. This pathetic flex culture gets worse. On sites like Depop and eBay, empty luxury bags and boxes, known as empties, are thriving businesses. If you feel like investigating, fall down the rabbit hole of celebrities and influencers being exposed for skipping out on bills, posing with rented items, or acting like their faux items are actually designer. Sadly, this fake it until you make it mentality can pay off for some influencers, whose industry is worth over $13 billion annually. When comedian and IG influencer B. Simone was on her last leg of a crusade to become a millionaire by her next birthday, she sold a $25 manifestation guide filled with plagiarized work because she lacked the experience and discipline to create and sell a book with her own ideas. While some people defended her as hustling, the creatives she stole from and all the creatives who would loathe similar thievery of their own work cringed at the blatant exploitation and the shamelessness of faking it until you make it. But people who fake their identities online, from physical to political to financial, are more likely to feel fake all the time and to feel like all of their personal relationships with others are fake. While those faking finances may not have much in common with those who are actually incomprehensibly rich, they both do lean towards the same way of thinking: a relentless pursuit of wealth, even if it is exploitative. The billionaire Jeff Bezos sleeps peacefully at night while many of his employees are underpaid and uninsured, putting their bodies on the line for his wealth and sometimes even pissing in bottles. The same can be said about countless industrialists, businessmen, and celebrities, especially those who embrace conservative values for tax and business purposes. Greed, materialism, and a denial of the existence of inequality or systemic harm makes it much easier for human relationships and empathy to become transactional. Tim Kasser told Wired, quote, "After over 200 studies, we know that the more people endorse materialism, the worse their well-being. growing. They're less empathetic, less pro-social, more competitive. They're less likely to support environmental sustainability. And they're more likely to endorse prejudicial and discriminatory beliefs. To a degree, especially as somebody who has always been poor, I understand the allure of wealth porn, especially when I was working 2 or 3 jobs at a time and attending school full-time. All the labor I was putting in as a teen needed to feel like it was going to be rewarded one day, and it is satisfying to see people succeed and thrive, especially those who are usually kept from thriving and succeeding. Shit, I still personally enjoy seeing black women succeed, and you can call that my toxic trait because I'm not perfect. So it's not surprising to see tweets from people being excited about people who they identify with, ticking off the usual markers of success, you know, cars, homes, degrees, jobs, etc. Or when they sign lucrative deals. But like with literally everything, there are dark extremes. Non-stop obsession with wealth porn is more than just inspiration material. I'm sick of people flexing on the internet and judging others by what they don't have. I'm sick of fraud. I'm sick of seeing people in toxic relationships putting up with abuse, disrespect, and trauma because luxury goods and vehicles are in the mix. I'm sick of ostentatious wealth coupled with publicized philanthropy that would be rendered unnecessary if everyone paid their fair share of taxes and everyone got paid fairly, being the standard of excellence, especially in the black community. But as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, this isn't just a black people or even American problem. Societies have always revered wealth. From the pharaohs of Egypt to Mansa Musa of Mali in the 14th century, to European monarchs, to various Chinese dynasties, and countless other aristocracies and feudal systems throughout history. And whenever you peel back origins of the wealth, exploitation in one form or the other is at the core. But American notions of materialism and celebrity, thanks to our lovely myths about capitalism, have been increasingly globalized in the past 40 years. The result of our celebrity and materialism-obsessed culture fusing with very old fascinations and justifications of monarchies and aristocracy is not surprising. And when wealth is fused with religious and spiritual ideas that good fortune is bestowed upon those most blessed or vibrational or in tune or whatever, wealth inequality seems even less pressing. Humanity has always been primed to worship and adore those with wealth and exploit those without it. That is an annoyingly nauseating pill to swallow, and one that must be accounted for as we try to shape a better world. Earlier, I asked about the cost of consuming so much wealth porn. Data says some people are valuing themselves and others based on income, wealth, and possessions, impacting political beliefs and self-esteem. As the wealth gap continues to grow and environmental problems continue to grow and racial issues exacerbated by poverty continue to go unaddressed, how do we benefit from having a populace bowled over by fancy lifestyles and publicized displays of philanthropy, but who are barely interested in fundamental systemic change? Like with any other media we decide to consume and ultimately give clout to, what do we have to lose by pausing to consider what we're buying or endorsing before sharing or parting with our money? Blowing big bags like Jeffree Star and Trisha Paytas to Paytas. I said it right that time, Paytas. I don't know why I want to say potatoes. Why do I want to say Trisha Potatoes? Oh.